This story is titled, When I Won the Lottery, My Parents Wanted to Take It Away to Fund Their Golden Child's Future, ruining mine in the process. When I refused, they kicked me out. But karma had different plans. Hey everyone. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. What's up, guys? I never thought I'd be writing something like this. But my life has taken a turn that feels straight out of a bad sitcom, and I need to get this off my chest. Bear with me. So, growing up, I always felt like an afterthought in my own family. My parents had two kids, me, Daniel, 28 male, and my younger brother Ryan, 22 male. From the very beginning, it was clear Ryan was their favorite. Actually, favorite doesn't even cut it. They treated him like royalty while I was more like background noise. It wasn't just little things, like who got the last cookie. It was everything. I remember when I graduated high school, I got a $50 bill and a card with, "We're so proud of you," scribbled inside. 2 years later, Ryan got a fully loaded car as a, "You're doing so great" gift. Never mind that I was already working part-time jobs to pay for community college while Ryan lounged around at home. I'll admit, for a long time I tried to let it slide. Told myself it was just the way things were. When I finally moved out last year, I thought I was breaking free. It felt like the start of something new, like I could finally build a life where I didn't have to compete for scraps of attention. And for a while, it was good. Quiet, but good. Then, out of nowhere, they called me up one night. I remember it vividly. My mom hit me with, "We were thinking, maybe you could start putting aside part of your salary for Ryan's future wedding." I was speechless. Ryan wasn't even dating anyone at the time. Wasn't like he had a serious girlfriend, let alone plans to settle down. And here they were, asking me, a single guy hustling to get by, to save my hard-earned money for some hypothetical event in Ryan's life. I told them I'd think about it, mostly because I was too stunned to say anything else. But apparently, even that wasn't good enough. A few days later, my dad called me. No preamble, no small talk. He just jumped straight into it. He said he'd heard I was hesitant about the wedding fund, and that he was disappointed in me. "You've always been so selfish," he said. I mean, selfish? After everything I'd done to support them, to be the responsible one, to try to earn their approval, it was like a switch flipped in my brain. That was the moment I realized the truth I'd been avoiding my whole life. I'd never really mattered to them. No matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. They didn't see me as their son, not in the same way they saw him. To them, I was just there, the extra, the backup plan. And honestly, that realization hurt more than I can even put into words. Anyway, my life up until that point had been a grind, plain and simple. I was scraping by, juggling bills, and trying to keep my head above water. You know how it is. Paycheck to paycheck, crossing your fingers that nothing major breaks because you can't afford to fix it. I wasn't bitter about it or anything. It was just life, and I figured that's how most people get by. No handouts, no shortcuts, just putting in the work and hoping things eventually get easier. I didn't have much, but what I had, I'd earned. Then, out of nowhere, the impossible happened. One random Tuesday night, I'm sitting in my tiny apartment, eating ramen and half watching some trashy reality show, when I remembered I had a lottery ticket I'd bought on a whim a few days before. I don't usually play, but I'd been at the gas station, and something about the big jackpot sign caught my eye. Why not, right? So, I pulled the crumpled ticket out of my jacket pocket and decided to check it. And holy crap, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. I didn't just win a little. This wasn't one of those dinky $50 scratcher wins where you get excited and then realize it barely covers your gas money. No, this was the real deal. $500,000, $500,000. I remember staring at the ticket, convinced I'd made some kind of mistake. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might actually pass out. My palms were so sweaty I had to put the ticket down because I was afraid I'd smudge the numbers. I checked the numbers again and again, about 10 times just to be sure. And every single time they matched. It didn't feel real. It felt like a glitch in the universe. My brain was a mess, half shouting, "This can't be happening!" and half trying to figure out what the hell to do next. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the ticket like it might catch fire in my hand, or $500,000. That was more money than I'd ever seen in my entire life. More money than I ever thought I'd have. It wasn't enough to retire or anything, but it was enough to completely change the game. Enough to breathe for the first time in years. Enough to stop scraping by and start actually living. The weight on my shoulders started to lift. I could finally stop living paycheck to paycheck, constantly stressed about rent or whether my car would survive another year. This money wasn't just a financial windfall. It was freedom. And let me tell you, I had plans. Big ones. I wasn't about to go full-on reckless, blowing it all on fancy cars or designer clothes. That's not me. No, I wanted to invest it into something meaningful. Something I'd been dreaming about for years. A clothing line for kids. I'd been sketching design since college, and now I finally had the chance to turn those sketches into reality. For once, I wasn't just surviving, I was building. Little did I know that money was about to turn my family into a whole new kind of nightmare. Naturally, I shared the news with my family. Big mistake. You'd think they'd be happy for me, right? The moment they found out, it was like a switch flipped. My mom didn't even say congratulations. Her first words were, "Oh, so now you can help us with the mortgage." Then my dad chimed in with, "And Ryan, you can finally pay for him to go to med school." I thought they were joking at first. I laughed and said, "No, the money is for me. I've got plans for it." That's when the mood shifted. My mom said, "Daniel, this is a blessing for the family. You need to think about everyone, not just yourself." My dad nodded. "Ryan's always dreamed of being a doctor," he added. "This is your chance to make that happen." I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening. We were sitting in my parents' living room, and the conversation had somehow veered into the twilight zone. They were acting like the lottery win wasn't my accomplishment, like the check was made out to the family of Daniel, and I was just the lucky one holding it. My mom started in with her usual family-first spiel, going on about how Ryan's med school dreams were within reach now, how they could finally pay off the mortgage, how this was an opportunity for all of us. She even threw in some line about how this would bring us closer together. Yeah, nothing brings people together like turning one person into an ATM, right? I tried to stay calm, but inside, I was boiling. I told them straight up, "This money is for me. I've worked my ass off for years with no help, no handouts. I finally have a chance to build something for myself, and I'm not giving that up." Cue the waterworks. My mom's face crumpled, and the tears started falling like she was auditioning for an Oscar. She hit me with the classic guilt line. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Done for me?" My jaw practically hit the floor. I wanted to laugh, but I was too angry. What had they ever done for me besides throw every ounce of attention, affection, and support at Ryan? Every milestone in my life had been met with indifference. Graduating college? A pat on the back? Landing my first job? Barely a nod. Meanwhile, Ryan sneezed, and they were throwing him a parade. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said, "No. That money is going toward my business, and that's final." My dad wasn't having it. He called me greedy for wanting to use my own money to chase a dream I'd been holding on to for years. Meanwhile, Ryan was living off their handouts like it was his birthright. But my mom, oh, my mom, she said she was ashamed of me. I stared at her, speechless for a moment. I mean, the sheer audacity of it. Then came the ultimatum. My dad leaned forward, his tone cold and firm. "If you won't help the family, don't bother coming around anymore." Well, I wasn't stupid. I knew our relationship wasn't perfect, but to hear it laid out so bluntly, it felt too much. Still, I knew I couldn't give in. I'd spent my entire life bending over backward for them, for Ryan. And where had it gotten me? Nowhere. I stood up, heart pounding but voice steady, and said, "Fine, I'll leave." Their eyes widened like they hadn't actually expected me to call their bluff. I went upstairs, grabbed a bag, and packed as much as I could fit. Clothes, personal stuff, a few keepsakes, whatever I could carry. My mom was crying in the hallway, mumbling something about how I was breaking up the family. My dad didn't say a word, just watched me with this disappointed glare, like I was the one ruining everything. I walked out the door that night and didn't look back. My new apartment was tiny. Just one room, a kitchenette, and a bathroom that barely fit a shower. But it was mine. No guilt, no manipulation, no constant pressure to sacrifice myself for someone else's dreams. It wasn't much, but it felt like freedom. About a month later, they tried again. My mom called, all sweetness and light, acting like nothing had happened. She asked how I was doing and if I'd thought any more about helping the family. When I told her the answer was still no, she lost it. She said I was abandoning them, that Ryan deserved this chance more than anyone, and that I'd regret being so cold-hearted. Then Ryan started texting me. He didn't even try to hide his entitlement. "Bro, I need you to come through for me. Med school is expensive, and you're in a position to help. You know I'd do the same for you. I stared at that text for a good 5 minutes before laughing. I texted back, "You've never done anything for me, Ryan. Why should I sacrifice everything for you now?" His response? "Wow, didn't know you were this petty." I was petty for wanting to keep the money I'd won, to build something for myself after years of being overlooked. It was almost funny, the way they twisted everything to make me the bad guy. Almost. I thought blocking their numbers would give me some peace, but my family doesn't understand boundaries. It started small. Subtle moves meant to corner me into submission. My aunt showed up unannounced at my boutique, acting like she was just in the neighborhood. She browsed for a bit, complimenting my work, and then casually brought up Ryan. "He's under so much pressure, Daniel," she said, picking up a kid's hoodie like we were discussing the weather. "If you just help with his tuition, I know it would mean the world to your parents." And to him. I smiled tightly and thanked her for stopping by. That night, she called me a disgrace to the family in a Facebook post, which conveniently left out the part where I refused to be guilt-tripped. My parents weren't far behind. My mom made a grand show of accidentally leaving a family group chat open on her tablet during Sunday lunch at a relative's house. I wasn't there, of course, but I heard about it later. Apparently, the chat included messages about my lottery win, calling it a blessing for us all. My uncle told me she even zoomed in on the part where Ryan had added, "Daniel's lucky he's in a position to step up for his family." Then came the wedding stunt. My mom and dad decided to throw an elaborate engagement dinner for a family friend and conveniently didn't invite me. I didn't find out until a neighbor congratulated me on Ryan's generous sponsorship of the event. Turns out, they'd publicly announced that I had offered to cover the costs as a show of family unity. The entitlement didn't stop there. One day, I arrived home to find a gift basket on my doorstep. At first, I thought it was a sweet gesture from a client, but the note inside quickly cleared that up. "A little something to thank you in advance for your generosity with Ryan's education fund. We're so proud of you, Daniel. Love, Mom and Dad." I threw the basket in the trash. The next week, my dad cornered me at my boutique, clipboard in hand. He had a full budget proposal for Ryan's master's program, down to the last cent. "It's not just about the tuition," he explained, his tone businesslike, as if we were negotiating a loan. "Ryan will need living expenses, study materials, travel costs. We don't want him distracted by money while he's pursuing his dream." My patience snapped. "No," I said, cutting him off mid-sentence. "This isn't a family crowdfunding event." The answer is no. His expression darkened, and he left without another word. 2 days later, I got a letter from a lawyer. It wasn't a lawsuit, thankfully, but it was a formal request signed by my parents, asking me to consider a voluntary family financial agreement to support Ryan's education and help pay off their mortgage. The audacity of it floored me. Still, the most outrageous moment came when my mom orchestrated what she called a family intervention. She roped in an old pastor from our community who visited me at my boutique with Ryan in tow. The pastor opened with a prayer about unity and sacrifice. Ryan just sat there, nodding solemnly as if he were a saint instead of a freeloading disaster. When the pastor finished, my mom said, "Daniel, this is your chance to be a true blessing to your family." I couldn't even respond. I just walked away, leaving them standing there, bewildered. That evening, I changed the locks at my boutique. Meanwhile, my business was thriving. Orders were coming in, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was building something that truly mattered. But even with every success, I couldn't fully escape their shadow. It wasn't just their audacity, it was the way they truly believed I owed them everything. Not a loan, not a favor, but my entire future. Still, I reminded myself, I'd worked for this. I'd earned this. And I wasn't about to let them take it away. But my family wasn't done yet. About a month later, I was closing up the boutique when I heard a knock on the glass door. It was late, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I turned and froze when I saw my mom standing there, red-faced and clearly upset. Against my better judgment, I walked over and unlocked the door. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I asked. She stepped inside, wiping her eyes. "Daniel, I need to talk to you, please. It's not about money. It's about family." I crossed my arms and leaned against the counter, skeptical. "Okay, what's going on?" She hesitated, looking like she was trying to find the right words. Then she blurted out, "It's Ryan. He's in trouble." I wasn't expecting that. What kind of trouble? He's been arrested. The police raided his apartment and found stolen credit cards. He's been using them to buy expensive clothes, electronics, nights out. They're charging him with fraud. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting it sink in. Of course, Ryan had managed to land himself in something like this. I should have seen it coming. "And now you're here because you want me to fix it," I said. She flinched, like I'd slapped her. "We need your help. His bail is $15,000 and we don't have it. We can't afford a lawyer either. Please, Daniel, he's your brother. You can't let him go to jail? I stared at her, trying to process everything. Part of me wanted to laugh in disbelief. The other part wanted to scream. Do you hear yourself? I said, my voice rising. After everything you've put me through, you show up now, when he's in trouble, and expect me to fix it? She clasped her hands together, her eyes desperate. It's not like that, Daniel. He's your brother. He needs you. I shook my head, pacing behind the counter. He doesn't need me. He needs to take responsibility for his actions. You've spent his whole life shielding him from consequences, and now look where that's gotten him. Please, she whispered. I'll pay you back. I swear. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Pay me back? Really, Mom? We both know that's not going to happen. She looked down. As much as I wanted to slam the door on this mess, I couldn't quite bring myself to leave Ryan in jail. Not entirely, anyway. Fine, I said, my tone sharp. I'll pay the bail. But here's how it's going to work. I'm sending the money directly to the bondsman. You're not touching a cent of it. And this is a one-time deal. If he screws up again, he's on his own. She nodded quickly, relief washing over her face. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Don't thank me, I yelled. This isn't about you or Ryan. This is me setting the boundary. One mistake and that's it. Understood? She hesitated for a moment and finally said, Understood. I walked her to the door without another word. As she stepped outside, I closed it firmly behind her and locked it. Watching her walk away, I felt a mix of emotions. I hated that I'd been dragged into their mess again, but at least this time, I'd done it on my terms. The next morning, I wired the money to the bondsman and blocked her number. I didn't even bother telling Ryan what I'd done. Let him think Mom and Dad had pulled off some miracle. I wasn't interested in being anyone's savior anymore. It wasn't long before I started hearing whispers from mutual acquaintances. Ryan had made bail, but his legal troubles were far from over. My parents were still scrambling to figure out how to cover his lawyer fees. But I was done. No more bailouts, no more guilt trips, no more sacrificing my peace for a family that had never done the same for me. However, I honestly want to know what would happen to Ryan. I'm curious how he's going to save himself, since he doesn't know anything other than playing the role of the spoiled kid. If anything new arises, I'll post it here for you guys if you're interested. Update 1 point. Hey Reddit, it's been a while, but as promised, I'm back with an update. Turns out I didn't have to wait long to see how things unfolded with Ryan and my parents. And oh boy, it's been something. So, after bailing Ryan out, I braced myself for more chaos. It felt inevitable with my family. But for a brief moment, there was silence. No emails, no calls, no guilt-laden texts. I'd almost convinced myself they were finally leaving me alone. 2 weeks after I wired the money to the bondsman, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Ryan. No thanks, no acknowledgement of what I'd done for him. Instead, he wrote, Hey, can you send over $5,000 for my lawyer? They say it'll help with my case. I stared at the message, completely dumbfounded. I'd just dropped $15,000 to get him out of jail, and now he was back with his hand out? Wasn't even a question. It was a demand. Like I owed it to him. I didn't bother responding. I blocked the number and tried to focus on my business. My boutique had just opened its doors, and I was working 12-hour days to keep things running smoothly. I didn't have the bandwidth for Ryan's nonsense. But my parents wouldn't let it go. A few days later, my mom sent a long, rambling email about how Ryan was struggling, how the legal system was unfair, and how I was abandoning him in his time of need. She threw in a guilt-laden line about how she and my dad had sacrificed everything to give me a good life, and now it was my turn to repay them. For what? For years of being ignored, overlooked, and treated like Ryan's backup plan? I didn't reply. I didn't even open the next email she sent, or the one after that. Things escalated quickly. My mom must have told Ryan I wasn't budging, because he started getting aggressive. I began hearing from mutual acquaintances, old friends, extended family, even a former teacher, telling me I should help my brother. Apparently, Ryan had been spinning some sob story about how I was living it up with my lottery winnings, while he was suffering. It pissed me off. Not just the lies, but the audacity. He'd never worked a day in his life for anything. Eventually, I heard through the grapevine that Ryan's case wasn't going well. He'd refused a plea deal because he thought he could beat the charges. Classic Ryan, arrogant and entitled to the end. My parents were scrambling to find money for his legal fees. They'd already maxed out their credit cards and taken out a second mortgage on the house. Did I feel bad for them? Honestly, not really. They'd spent their whole lives enabling Ryan, shielding him from the consequences of his actions. Now they were finally seeing what happens when you let someone believe they're untouchable. A few weeks later, my aunt called with an update. Ryan had been sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud. She told me my parents were devastated. that my mom hadn't stopped crying since the verdict. She asked if I'd come visit them, maybe help them, make sense of everything. I told her no, not out of spite, but because I'd finally learned my lesson. I couldn't fix this for them. And then out of nowhere, just as I was starting to feel like life was back on track, I got an email from a local supplier I worked with for the boutique. They were severing ties with me, claiming they'd received disturbing reports about unethical practices in my business. Unethical practices? I'd built my boutique on honesty and transparency, and I knew this had to be some kind of mistake. I spent the next few days chasing down answers, only to discover the real culprit behind the smear campaign: Ryan. Apparently, he'd been pulling strings from prison, feeding lies to suppliers, and even leaving fake reviews online to tarnish my reputation. A mutual acquaintance who still talked to my parents let it slip that Ryan blamed me for his downfall. According to him, I'd refused to help him when he needed it most, and this was his way of getting even. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. After everything he'd done, stealing from our family, taking advantage of my parents, and ending up in prison because of his own choices, he still thought he was the victim. And now, he wanted to drag me down with him? The thing is, Ryan underestimated me. He thought I'd crumble under pressure, that I'd fold the way I used to whenever my parents asked me to be the bigger person. Not this time. I'd worked too hard to let him ruin what I'd built. Here where I am right now. I think Ryan had made his move. Now it was my turn? Or do you think I should stay silent? Final update, ... What's up, everyone? It's Daniel, and I'm back with an update. And yeah, it's a wild one. Remember when I told you how Ryan wasn't content with just wrecking his own life, so he decided to take a shot at mine too? Well, here's the thing. When you come for me, you better be ready for what's coming back. Let me tell you how I turned the tables on him. I contacted my lawyer and laid out everything. Emails, reviews, even the whispers I'd heard from mutual acquaintances. It wasn't long before we had enough to prove what he was doing. I sent a cease and desist letter to his prison and worked with the suppliers to clear my name. Some of them even apologized, realizing they'd been manipulated. It wasn't easy bouncing back from the hit to my reputation, but every victory felt sweeter knowing I'd fought for it myself. After Ryan was sentenced, I thought the nightmare was over. The calls didn't just continue, they got louder. The messages, guilt-laden and accusatory, piled up like debris from a storm I couldn't escape. My mom led the charge with her typical dramatic flair. Every voicemail was a symphony of sniffles and trembling words. Do you even care what this has done to us? The house feels so empty without Ryan. We barely sleep, Daniel. She painted herself as the martyr, throwing in the occasional jab for good measure. You're punishing us for mistakes that weren't even that serious. Then my dad jumped in. His tone was colder, sharper. No theatrics, just straight up anger. Family is family, he said in one message. You don't turn your back on us, Daniel. One day you'll regret what you're doing. All for what? Boutique? You think that makes you better than us? It didn't sting the way it used to. What hit me instead was the realization that they still didn't get it. I wasn't their son in their eyes. I was their last resort, their fixer, and now that Ryan couldn't play the golden child anymore, they were determined to squeeze me dry. I was so tired with all that shut. About a month after Ryan's sentencing, I was starting to feel like things were finally settling down. Then, one morning, I opened my mailbox and found a letter with a prison return address. My chest tightened when I saw Ryan's name scrawled on the envelope. At first, I considered throwing it straight in the trash. What could he possibly have to say that I hadn't already heard? Apologies laced with manipulation? A sob story designed to guilt me into sending him money? I was done with all of it. But something about that letter tugged at me. Whatever it was, I opened it. It started with a weak attempt at small talk. I hope this letter finds you well, but quickly got to the point. Ryan admitted he'd spent a lot of time thinking about what he'd done, not just to himself, but to me. He didn't try to justify his actions or shift the blame like he usually did. Instead, he laid it all out in stark honesty. I've been jealous of you my whole life, he wrote. I know it might not have looked like it on the surface, but I've always felt like you were everything I wasn't. You were the one with ambition, the one who actually built something for yourself. Mom and Dad might have coddled me, but I always knew they were prouder of you, and I hated it. Reading that stopped me cold. For years, I'd believed Ryan thought he was untouchable, the golden child who could do no wrong. Hearing that he'd secretly envied me all along was like someone flipping a switch. It didn't erase the pain he'd caused, but it made me see him in a different light. Ryan went on to confess that his jealousy had driven everything he'd done to hurt me. When you wouldn't bail me out, It felt like proof that I was worthless, he wrote. Instead of looking in the mirror and fixing myself, I lashed out at you. I thought if I could knock you down, it would make me feel better about my own failures. But all it did was ruin both of us. He even addressed the sabotage. I know you know what I did to your business. I wanted to watch you fall, but seeing how you bounced back, it just reminded me of what I've never been able to do. I'm sorry, Daniel. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know. The letter was raw in a way I wasn't used to from Ryan. He didn't ask for anything. Not forgiveness, not money, not even a response. He ended by saying he was working on himself, trying to understand why he'd made the choices he did. I don't expect you to ever want a relationship with me again, he wrote, but I wanted to tell you the truth, for once. When I finished reading, I just sat there, staring at the letter. I'd spent so much of my life angry at Ryan, frustrated by the way he manipulated everyone around him, hurt me, and always got away with it. This was the first time he'd taken any kind of responsibility for his actions. And while I wasn't ready to forgive him, I couldn't ignore the honesty in his words. I thought about everything he'd said for days. Part of me wanted to crumple the letter and toss it, to move on and never look back. But another part of me felt, I don't know, not sympathy exactly, but a flicker of understanding. Ryan was a mess, but maybe, just maybe, he was starting to see that for himself. I haven't decided if I'll write back. For now, the letter is sitting in my desk drawer, a reminder of how deep wounds can go, and how sometimes even the people who've hurt you the most are battling demons of their own. I'm not sure where this will go, or if it'll go anywhere at all. But for the first time, Ryan feels like less of a villain in my story, and more like a cautionary tale.